So do we want to start with or without Pat? We're waiting for Mike.
William Harris isn't here either.
Will is here.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And Michael's not walked in either.
Is Pat a prompt person?
Pat
Peckham.
usually is for county areas. See him walking in.
When he walks in, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'm just, he's.
He's on his way in.
He
We're gonna
accepted the
start when he
invitation
gets in.
10 minutes ago, so I don't know if he's waiting on something or if he's just. Oh, I've got it.
I think we just put Pat up here for spacing purposes.
That's my issue this morning.
You said Pat was walking in?
Yeah, he was. Oh, there he is. Oh, okay, good. There he comes.
Pat, we got you up here. Why don't we call the meeting of the Wausau Policing Task Force to order? I assume everybody is present, so the roll will reflect that. Why don't we start out, because it's our first meeting, if we could just take a minute to go around and introduce ourselves and a little bit about what brings you here today. Today is going to be a little bit more informal and more discussion and process orientated. I'm hoping that we can limit our meetings to about an hour and a half. I think once you get beyond an hour and a half, substance and seats start to suffer. So the goal will be that we have our meetings and with that in mind. So I'm John Robinson. I think I'm here because I've known Katie since she's been born. And been a family friend forever with her dad, but I have some ties to local government, both in county board and in a past life as a member of the city council and as a mayor. and I'm very interested in the issues before us in the context of equity and how do we improve our community and how do we continue to have the community place its trust and confidence in law enforcement and make this a safe place for people to live healthy lives and work on becoming prosperous, sort of the goals of the county. So who would like to go next? Pat?
Pat Peckham, City Council member, microphone user. Anyway, civil rights, as it used to be referred to more often when I was in high school, has been kind of on my mind since seeing those TV images of what was happening in the southern states, and so that has stayed with me, and I continue to have an interest in such issues. So I easily succumbed to Mayor Katie's invitation to serve on this board.
Michael?
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Loy. I'm the current CEO at North Central Healthcare, but part of the reason that brings me here is I'm also the chair of the Police and Fire Commission, officially, what was that, 2 weeks ago? Well, yeah. Obviously watching things that have been happening over the last several months and certainly even the last several years in the human resources field, which is where I got my start. I've worked for both the city of Wausau in a human resources capacity and the city of Wauwatosa in a human resources capacity earlier in my career, working specifically with the police and fire departments in both agencies and understanding the importance of those hiring decisions and the quality of those policing organizations specifically, and felt really compelled to help hopefully lead the community forward given these times. I'm proud of what we do here in Wausau, and I think we can lead on a statewide basis, and just happy to be part of looking at opportunities for us to improve and to be out front. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Katie. I'm the mayor, and this is something that, you know, we've been mulling about after especially seeing the latest, the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, and some of the other issues that we've seen. You know, I definitely believe in what we're doing here in Wausau. I think we're doing a lot of really good things. So like Michael, I think that we have the opportunity to lead. I've already had people from other states reach out asking about our task force and our charter and what we're doing. So I feel really good about the direction we're going. Now comes the hard work, the grappling with the issues. So first of all, just thank you for participating in this. I know it takes a lot of time and mental capacity. I mean, you have to be very thoughtful, and it's a lot. So thank you for being here. I'm glad we have our first meeting here. And just a little housekeeping, there's a little switch on and off that deals with your microphone. They're pretty touchy, so you might want to turn it off if you're not talking. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Kayla McCauley. I work as a behavioral health technician at North Central Healthcare. I'm a 2018 graduate of Wausau West, and I'm a nursing student at North Central Technical College. Back in June, I helped to organize the George Floyd March that took place here in Wausau. Black history, the Black community, that's something that's really important to me, even though the Black population in Wausau isn't particularly large. We're here, and it's really important to me that we have representation on things like this, not only just the Black community as a whole, but also young Black people. I want to be a voice for young people in this community and let them see that there are opportunities for us to share our perspectives, because we're really important in conversations like this. Because when they're talking about the future, they're talking about young people like me. So thanks so much, Katie, for having me here today, and I'm really excited to help see what I can do for this.
Will?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Harris. I'm a Marathon County Board Supervisor for District 3. I also work as an attorney serving low-income populations and also people facing abuse. I wanted to be on this task force because I've always wanted to work to make my community better. Issues in terms of what communities of color face obviously affect me and affect others here. And I've been involved in a number of, I was involved with the Black Lives Matter March, but I've been involved in a number of other committees and boards in our community, and I really want to just make sure that we're continuing to move in the right direction, and that everyone feels that they're served by the great men and women that serve on the police force. So thank you, Mayor Katie Rosenberg, and everyone on the committee here.
You're going to be part of this, I think, on a regular basis.
My name is Jean Frankel. I'm in admin at the Wausau Police Department, and I am the scribe.
We'll go to the remote. Sarah, do you want to share your background?
Sure. I am, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am Sarah Schneck. I am a teacher at EEA Learning Academy. We work with more at-risk youth. This is my 14th year teaching there. I also participated in the Black Lives Matter March and the George Floyd March. And during that time, talking with my two daughters who are of color, just really reaching and trying to figure out what more can I do besides the marching and the reading and gaining the knowledge that I need to make an impact. And then I had seen what Katie had put forward in trying to make a change for our community, and thought it would be a great opportunity to do that. And thanks, Katie, for making this a possibility.
Michael? Michael, you're muted on your end. Michael? Michael, do you want to give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. So, through an illustrious career, I've worked in the criminal justice system here in Wausau, and then I have I teach criminal justice for UW Platteville remotely, and my graduate studies are focused on race and ethnic relations as well as criminal justice. So I bring sort of an academic side as well as some personal experience in the city, both as a resident and in the system.
Ben, do you want to give us a background now or when you come up?
I'm Ben Bliven. I'm the police chief for the city of Wausau. I've been with the Wausau Police Department for 20 years, and I grew up in this community, and I'm really glad to participate in this task force and provide any information that I can to help us improve and get better. Thanks.
Thank you. Tom? We have Alder Tom Neal here.
Well, yeah, I'm just coming to watch. And I'm glad you're all doing this. And I'm pretty excited about the prospects of it. I think it's important.
So Katie, do you want to give us an overview of why you created the task force?
Sure, thank you, Chair Robinson. So if you're in here, you'll see on the back of your name tag, we have the mission and purpose of our task force, just to kind of level set every time we come here, just make sure that we're focusing on the right stuff. Mr. Robinson commented on making sure we have parking lots for issues, because I think we're going to have a lot of stuff that's going to come out that's going to need conversation, but maybe not right here. So just rest assured, we will have those conversations, but maybe in a different format. I've been talking to the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, for instance, on how we can maybe further some discussions that don't fit in the task force but are related and adjacent. So anyway, why we're here, so I would say probably the end of March or May, I started hearing from a lot of people about the 8 Can't Wait campaign, and then former President Obama's mayor's pledge, and asking me to sign on to some of these things. So the police chief and I had several conversations about this. And, there's a lot of stuff, even when we were looking at the 8 Can't Wait campaign, we've already enacted all of those things, and we're ahead of the curve on that. And it's good news. That's the great thing. But, there's also a lot that the Wausau community maybe doesn't understand about policing and police work, and the policies and what they mean for our community. We have 800 pages of policies that you can pour through on our website already, and you can search them and all of that. But, this is maybe an opportunity for us to look at the handful, the couple dozen that are the most impactful, and garner the most attention. So when I think about this task force, and what we need to accomplish, we have the commission level. There are 2 members of the Police and Fire Commission serving on this body, which I think is important, because we're going to have to understand what their role is moving forward, and if that changes at all. There's a statutory obligation, so there's a limit. But then this task force, so we want to bring the public along when it comes to exploring these policing and police policies in our community and what they look like. I think maybe just that public exploration is important, and discussion about it. What are we asking our officers to handle right now? When you think about the homelessness issue, the people who are leading the charge is the police department. When you talk about response to crisis, oftentimes if somebody sees somebody in crisis, they're calling the police first. So how can we make sure that we're asking our police to handle the right things and in the right way? And then what does the chain of events look like when it comes to use of force? I think that's a question that has popped up and been asked of me. Who investigates this? How does that work? So I'm thinking of a lot of questions that we probably already have answers to, but we need to discuss this publicly. And then on the other side, we'll have some deliverables, right? We want to have this task force do more than just kind of talk through this publicly. That's important, but we need more. We'll need at the end of this, and there will be a finite end to this at some point, I'm guessing. I don't want to put an end on it, but maybe a year or so. I don't know. I don't know what this looks like. But we'll need some recommendations and a report, so that we can look at how do we implement the best policies for our community. And maybe what else we need to talk about. And maybe it's not in this task force. Maybe it's how we interact with the mental and behavioral health systems. Maybe that's something that Wausau needs to take a bigger stance on. And then also, I'm looking at lost my spot here. I guess the last part, and I think I have it on your name tag, is kind of that wider community engagement. In the charter, we specifically said that we'll have a public hearing on some of this stuff, so you'll be involved in that. I anticipate we'll have more public engagement, but that's for sure going to happen. So when we have this report, we'll talk to the community about it. What does it look like? What are we expecting to accomplish? So I think that is where I'm at on what I want to accomplish here. So there you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Rosenberg. I'd like to just start out with some comments on how I view my role as a chair and where I would hope the task force would go. And I really hope that as a goal, we would all agree that we would operate in an environment of mutual trust for others' ideas and perspectives, and be respectful of all points of view. I think there's a need for us to focus on the charter and the responsibilities because we were created by the city. I think what we need to do is, what we need for decision-making in the agenda today is heavy on what do you need, what do you need to process, and what, at the end of the day, how will how will we define success? But it's important for us to focus in on problems as opportunities, in the issues that are relevant to Wausau. In as much as we may want to deal with issues that happen in Washington DC and elsewhere, our real impact is going to be on how we identify needs, problems, and options and create recommendations. When issues are beyond the scope of this task force, I'm going to propose that we create parking lots. And those parking lots are for items that are important to the future of these efforts. And then we can do check-ins with the city to make sure that it's within our scope, or if someone else should address those, whether it's the Police and Fire Commission, Public Safety Committee, or someone else. I think we need to develop a process for which we can engage the public and build their trust at the end of the day, so that whatever recommendations we have are supportable. I would hope that as a group that we would try to work through consensus and resolving the issues. And finally, again, I think at the end of the day, we should have specific, actionable recommendations for the city on where we think changes are merited and what those might look like, with potentially some timelines. So that would be how I will try to, based on the trust that the mayor has put in me to lead this group, try to direct the efforts. And if you have any questions on that, please let me know. Any questions? All right, then we'll move on to an overview of the police department by Chief Benjamin Blevin.
Kristen's going to share the screen there so everybody at home can see the presentation as well. So I'll just give her just a minute. Good? Okay. So first thing, I just want to let you know that you have flash drives that were provided to each of you. For those of you at home, we can get you those flash drives. And I just want to talk a little bit about what's on those drives. When the mayor and Chair Robinson asked me to provide an overview of the police department and do so in 15 to 20 minutes, I went through my mind to try and think about what do I need to say and tell you about in 15 to 20 minutes that will sufficiently cover the operations of the department. And I don't think I'm able to adequately do that, so I gave you a bunch of information on the jump drive. So there are about 25 policies on that jump drive that I thought would be relevant to this task force. We have 171 policies, so it's not all-inclusive. I can certainly provide those to you if you'd like, or they're all on our website, so you can certainly get them there as well. There's a report on there, which is our 2019 use of force report. We do an annual report that tells you what type of force we've used, how often, and it quantifies things. There's also some racial demographic within that report. There's a number of videos on there that just talks about different areas of our department and different aspects of our department. There is a report, a study done by COPS, which is a national organization, and it's entitled Analyzing Racial Profiling Data, and it just talks about how to analyze that data. There is some information on our crisis intervention training and the curriculum and the learning objectives within that crisis intervention training that law enforcement officers receive. President Obama's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, that document is on there. Our Wausau PD strategic plan, a training summary, the Wausau Police and Fire Commission manual that was updated this year. Learning objectives from the Wisconsin Police Academy, so that's our 720 hours of basic police training that every officer goes through. So the learning objectives from that academy is on there. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities puts out a handbook for police and fire commissioners, and so that handbook is on that jump drive. Our local Wausau Police Union contract is on there, so you can take a look at that if you would like to. And then the Wisconsin Professional Police Association recently put out a blueprint for change, which is their recommendations for policy initiatives and change that we can take in Wisconsin. And I thought that might be of interest to you, so I shared that on there as well. So a lot of information on there for you to look at. but feel free to let me know if there's any other additional information that you might need. This weekend, as I was going over the materials that I'm going to go through here, I was thinking about my daughter. She's away at school, and she's a big fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and so I just thought it was interesting that in my inbox over the weekend, through one of the policing websites that I subscribe to, there was some information that was provided about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and this quote, I think, is good for this committee, and it's relevant. And she said, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." And I think that's at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here. We're trying to fight for things that we all care about as a community, and we're going to do it in a way that leads others to join us. And I think that this task force has great opportunity here to provide leadership in our community and in our state and in the law enforcement profession. A couple of other things that I would say is, I would welcome if this task force is interested in putting together a Citizens Academy of sorts. If you're interested in a 4-hour session on specific topics around the Wausau Police Department that you might be interested in, certainly use of force and diving deep into how we use force and what the training is that we use and what our policy manual says. We can certainly provide people from our police department that are state certified in use of force to give information to you. I would encourage a ride-along. The mayor indicated potentially this will go well into 2021, so maybe right now isn't the best time for a ride-along with COVID-19, but we would certainly welcome any and all of you to participate in a ride-along with any one of our staff members, and we can certainly coordinate that. But I'm definitely available to all of you at any time to sit down and talk over a cup of coffee on any of the issues and just help talk a little bit further. So that's just a basic introduction. So first I'm going to talk about our mission, our core values, and our vision statement. I say on a regular basis when I'm out talking to the community that we are a mission-driven, values-focused, values-oriented police department. Everything that we do gets funneled through that mission statement, our core values, and our vision. The Wausau Police Department strives for excellence and partners with our community to enhance the quality of life. At the end of the day, we get paid a full-time salary to make our community a better place. We talk about our mission on a regular basis through our in-service. We talk about it at our swear-in ceremonies. We ask questions around our core values in our hiring process. Because at the end of the day, those things, if we focus on them, will help us improve, help us be better, and police in a way that our community expects us to police. So 3 parts of that mission statement: striving for excellence. That's what we're doing here. We're working, trying to get better, trying to figure out what are our deficits, where can we improve, and how do we go about doing that. So at the end of the day, we want to be very good because our community deserves the best. Community partnership is a huge component of what we do at the police department. It's our philosophy, which I'll get into a little bit later, which is a community-oriented philosophy. And community partnership is a big piece of that. It is partnering with other organizations in our community. It is a one-on-one partnership. It's every citizen encounter that we have as a police officer and a citizen. It's building a relationship so that trust is felt and there is trust, and it's built upon every single time we have contact with somebody. And everything that we do hopefully enhances the quality of life for every person that lives here. Our core values are professionalism, accountability, integrity, and respect. We talk about those all the time. When we review officer behavior or my behavior, we look to those core values. Were you professional? Are you accountable? Were you full of integrity? And were you respectful? Those are things that we believe in at a deep level. And our vision is to be regarded as a standard of excellence in policing. Again, excellence is a key factor of what we try to accomplish, and I hope that this task force helps us get to a better level, a higher level. So who are we? Who are the police officers that make up the Wausau Police Department? So we have 77 sworn staff today. We are authorized for 79. We have 2 vacancies right now. But I just wanted to give you a snapshot of what types of education that we have. 2/3 of officers have grown up in Marathon County. More than half of sworn police officers here have a bachelor's degree. 2 of them are practicing attorneys, are in the bar. 3 more officers have master's degrees, and you'll see a wide variance in terms of type of education that officers have, and we really actively seek that out. On your jump drive is our recruitment video, and we talk about, we want people from varied backgrounds. We want people not just that have a criminal justice degree. Some of our people do have criminal justice degree. I'm one of them, and they're great officers. But we want a varied background of people in who we hire. And 2/3 of the officers that we have here, they grew up in Marathon County. They're local people. They're people that care deeply about the community. And one of the things that we ask about and we talk about in our hiring process is how active they are in the community. What types of things do they do outside of coming to work and going home? We have a lot of people that are on boards of directors. We have a lot of people who are engaged in youth sports in their church and engaged in their community, and that's really important to us. One of the demographics that I haven't listed there is men versus women. We have 10 female sworn staff and 67 sworn male staff. Law enforcement historically has been a male-dominated profession, and we do actively seek out to hire females so that we can better match our community. In terms of the racial makeup of our police department, you'll see there that we have 69 white officers, 5 Asian officers, 2 Hispanic officers, and 1 African American officer. And then the demographics that I give on the right there, that's the city estimated census data from 2019, just so you have a little idea of what our makeup is as it compares to the city of Wausau. So our budget, the police department budget is about $10 million. Almost $9 million of that is salary for the staff that we have. So you'll see our budget is largely driven by staff, and that is we have 79 sworn police positions and 10 non-sworn civilian members of our department. And then the rest of the budget goes to maintaining and operating our vehicles, our office equipment, our IT department. We have a training budget, and those types of things make up the remainder of our budget. We do have a significant amount of grant money that we seek through the state and federal government, and that pays for a lot of different things. Some of it is sworn staff, some of it is not. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of our organizational chart, just so you have an idea of kind of the makeup there. Our command staff is comprised of me, the chief, our deputy chief, and 2 captains, the patrol captain and the investigations bureau captain. The patrol captain oversees everybody in uniform, basically. So there are 8 patrol lieutenants, and those lieutenants are split over 4 shifts, and we have about 45 patrol officers. And at any given time, you'll have at least 7 uniformed patrol officers working in the city at any given time. And then there's at least 1 patrol lieutenant to oversee those operations and what's going on the patrol level. And then our investigations bureau is really a lot of subunits. We have 7 investigators who are detectives. Those include an evidence custodian and a digital forensics investigator who investigates computer crimes, child pornography, those types of things. We have a victim resource unit. That victim resource unit is grant funded. So we have a therapist that is devoted solely to providing therapy to victims of crime. She does not provide therapy or mental health services to police officers, only to those victims in our community who need her assistance, and that's done free of charge. We have a community resource unit, which you'll hear a little bit further down in a video, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. A crisis assessment response team, school resource officers, and we have a clerical staff, a records unit. Gene is representative of that staff. Part-time community service officers, and a volunteer emergency police force. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of those in the future here. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our hiring philosophy and the process. The minimum requirements in Wisconsin to be hired as a police officer is 60. You have to have 60 college credits to become certified. You have to be at least 18 years of age and be able to legally possess a firearm, so that is not be a convicted felon, not have domestic violence convictions on your record. Those are the base minimum requirements to become a certified police officer in the state of Wisconsin. We do a lot to recruit. We have a recruitment budget. We do a lot of social media things to recruit. We do a lot of individual personal outreach. We travel to universities around the state, and we go to job fairs in Chicago, Minneapolis, Madison, Milwaukee, and other places in the state to do our best to try to recruit. Our philosophy for hiring is hire for character and train for skill. One of the things that sets us apart as a law enforcement agency is we do not require somebody to be police certified when they apply to the Wausau Police Department. And what that means is you don't have to have gone through the 720 hours of police academy prior to the application. We will pay somebody, the right candidate, to go through that 720-hour police academy and get paid. We'll pay for the academy and we'll pay them a salary to go through that academy. And the reason that we do that is because we get a much wider variation of candidates who can apply. We can, anybody in here that's got 60 college credits, you're eligible to apply for us. You don't have to have gone through that police academy first, and that's different than a lot of police agencies and law enforcement agencies. Most require you to have gone through that police academy first, and that allows us to cast our net much wider, look for the character of an individual, what type of person they are that fits our core values and what we're looking for in a candidate, and then hire them and then pay them to go through the police academy. So the hiring process includes interviews. We end up doing about 6 interviews with every candidate. We do a background investigation. One of our detectives is assigned to do that. It takes them about 40 work hours to do that background investigation. After one of their last interviews, we require them to go through a polygraph. We have a polygraph examiner at the police department, and they are tasked with going through the candidate's background and history and putting them through, it usually takes about 3 or 4 hours to do a polygraph examination. And I would tell you that that's a really critical piece of our hiring process, because we believe, again, in hire for character, train for skill, and there's a lot of things that we've learned at that polygraph stage, which is very late in the hiring process, that has disqualified candidates because we found that their character isn't what we need it to be. So that's a critical piece of the hiring process. And then after they're given a conditional offer of employment, they go through a psychological examination with the doctor out of the southeast part of the state to make sure they're of fit mind to be a police officer. After they're hired, we put them through maybe the police academy. Once they get out of the police academy, or if they've already completed that when they start, they go through an 18-week field training program, which is they're paired with 3 different field trainers during that process, and they have to be able to meet certain requirements by the time they're completed with their 18-week field training program. Once they're done with that 18 weeks, then they're out on their own. They're a police officer without a field training officer, but they're still serving an 18-month probationary period. And that probationary period is an important extension of the hiring process, because there are candidates who make it through the hiring process, make it through the police academy, make it through the field training program, but for some reason can't quite meet the expectations of being a police officer. So that 18-month probationary period allows us to terminate employment without cause. We can terminate employment for any reason, so we use that probationary period as best as we can. So the Police and Fire Commission, I want to talk just a little bit about what their role is. The Police and Fire Commission was established by Wisconsin State Statute 62.13. It was intentionally created by the state of Wisconsin to insulate law enforcement and firefighters from politics. And there are 5 members of each Police and Fire Commission. The mayor gets to appoint each commissioner 1 each year, and they serve a 5-year term. Their authority includes hiring, discipline, and termination. So I am not allowed to hire or fire any police officer. The Police and Fire Commission is responsible for hiring and firing police officers. So we work together in that, and you'll see in your PFC manual that's on your jump drive that a process laid out for that. There is an option in the state of Wisconsin that few cities use, but through a referendum you can opt for what's called optional powers. And I'm not an expert on optional powers, but I know that it gives the Police and Fire Commission more authority over the police department, which would be things like some budgetary authority, implementation of certain policies, and those kinds of things. So I just want to make sure this task force is aware that there are other options for civilian oversight in regards to law enforcement. Accountability of staff, I think I just wanted to make sure you know how we feel and how we talk about accountability. We have very high expectations for our staff, as evidenced by our mission and our core values. I think if you talk to any one of our staff members, they would tell you that we have very high expectations. We investigate every single citizen complaint that comes in against our police officers. We investigate them thoroughly, we document them, and then we provide feedback to people who have made the complaint. And then we maintain records of those things. We do an annual review of our use of force, which you'll have on your jump drive. And then we review every single use of force that happens at the police department. We have a primary tactical use of force instructor who will go through and evaluate the body camera footage, the report, and talk about the use of force, whether or not it was justified, whether or not additional training needs to be done with an individual or training as a department. And so I like to say that accountability cuts both ways. It's really important that we recognize good work when people do good work. So we work really hard on recognizing officers when they do well, and we have an annual awards banquet for that purpose and that kind of thing. So just to give you a synopsis of the 2018 and 2019 annual internal investigations, you'll see the result of those investigations. I just want to identify in each of the last 2 years, there was one resignation in lieu of termination, and I just wanted to make sure that you know that why we do that. When you allow somebody to resign in lieu of termination as opposed to just terminating them, that's a statement, right? And I would say that sometimes when an officer or a sworn staff member does something that justifies termination, it's hard for me to just allow them to resign in lieu of that termination. But that termination process, like I said, I don't have the authority just to terminate somebody. That is delegated to the Police and Fire Commission. So there's a process that can be very time-consuming when you want to terminate an employee. And so prior to that termination, we're required to pay them. We can have them on leave, so they're not actually working, but we're still required to pay them, pay their benefits and those kinds of things. So it can be often much less expensive if the employee just resigns in lieu of termination. And so the other piece of that is that our state of Wisconsin decertification process for police officers, in my opinion, is insufficient. We can only be decertified as police officers if we haven't met our annual in-service training requirement, which is mandated by the state, which is 24 hours. We can be decertified if we can't meet the minimum firearms training. But we can't necessarily be decertified because we were terminated as a police officer. So I think that's an important thing for you to know. So next one's gonna be a video. Oh, hold on. I need some volume. Do we have the TV remote? We could use the TV.
That's why.
Skip through that so that we don't have to worry about the.
No. If you can just turn off the mics.
So the Community Resource Unit is comprised of 4 officers. So the Community Resource Unit is comprised of 4 officers or investigators, and then myself, a lieutenant, who's currently overseeing the investigators. And we also have 2 investigators also in the Central Wisconsin Narcotics Task Force that we work in conjunction with as well. So the unit itself, Community Resource Unit, does a whole lot of things. We do a lot of investigations that stem from patrol calls that we need to do further follow-up from. A lot of that turns into drug investigations. Sometimes it's neighborhood disputes, sometimes it's nuisance issues. When we work along with the task force members, they usually deal with most drug investigations on a larger level. So our investigators here with the Community Resource Unit work alongside them. That's a joint operation between Marathon County, Everest Metro, State Patrol, Lincoln County, and then our department as well. We'll sit down with landlords, tenants, neighbors, and just have conversations. You know, hey, everybody's got to live next to each other. We want to make it the best place for the city, for every citizen. So what can we do to make it better? I think what the officers down here do, we do a lot of investigations, but I still think that we really are an extension of patrol. A lot of what we deal with is street crime level stuff. Just being able to dedicate a little bit more time and resources to it. One of us is at every neighborhood meeting. Each month, we've got 10 different neighborhood groups in the area, and we attend each one of those. So they come to us, they call us, they email us, they have our direct lines. I've got text messages in the middle of the night from some of the neighbors in my area. We also do a lot of teaching and getting out into different areas as well. We've gone into Boys and Girls Club, some of the schools, some of the area businesses, and do a lot of training, just how to keep yourself well. We've gone into some of the nursing homes and done like wellness type of trainings for people that are living there. We've done drug trainings at different businesses, schools. And I think when you mentioned the community resource unit, most neighborhood groups especially, they know that officer and they know we're an extension of how to get a hold of a police officer. So if they're not comfortable calling dispatch or talking to an officer, because we get to see them every month, that they're more willing to talk with us as well too.
And so she does a good job talking about the community policing philosophy. Really at the core of the community policing philosophy, which is a buzzword around the country in terms of law enforcement, what it comes down to is building trust with each and every member of your community. And that's where the community partnership comes in from our mission statement. And so we really work day in and day out. Every single time that we have contact with a member of our community, we have an opportunity to really build that trust. And so that's the philosophy that we have. That's the philosophy and understanding that all of our officers have every single time that they're interacting with somebody out in our community. So that trust is really built through one-on-one personal interactions. It's built through transparency. We really work hard through our social media efforts to make sure that people understand what's going on within the police department, why we're doing certain things, how we go about our work. So we really work hard on that transparency piece through our social media. We're engaged in community issues like the mayor mentioned before. Our crisis assessment response team is a partnership with North Central Healthcare and the Marathon County Sheriff's Office. We've been working diligently on homelessness through a couple of different initiatives with a lot of community leaders in that homelessness area. And we're community participants. We definitely go to a lot of different events. We're always present and engaged in the community, and we host a lot of different things and events, and there's some examples on there for you. This next video is Lieutenant Nathan Seiler. He's one of our detective lieutenants, and he oversees the CART program and the school resource officers.
So we have 4 SROs within the city of Wausau, 1 in each high school and 1 station in each middle school. The middle school officers are also responsible for responding to and assisting the various elementary schools, and there's 9 in the city. So there's a lot to cover, and they're definitely in high demand from our school district staff. The idea is that they bring that community policing model that we have here at Wausau PD and the Wausau community and bring that into that smaller school community. They are uniformed officers, and there's a marked squad car that's there. The primary reason for that is just that overall feeling of safety and sense of security. The vast majority of their time and most of their job is spent on that relationship building component. They're an extension of the school administrative team and work hand in hand with the school social workers, the counselors, the principals. Those SROs do and are encouraged to go out. They also go outside their buildings and provide a lot of support to those students and families out in their homes because they built those relationships. Wisconsin Department of Justice has created the Office of School Safety, which has brought a lot of more training and ideas and more consistency to school security. But number one is that relationship building with students. Students who are struggling come forward and will more likely to engage with that officer, we can get them the help they need before they spiral into something worse. Our officers in the buildings are obviously, they're considered part of that admin team in the schools. I mean, their pictures are in the school yearbooks. They're not sitting in their offices waiting for something to happen. They're involved in all of the staff meetings at school and really keeping a beat and a pulse on what's happening in their school community. The use of force is very rare in our schools. In this past school year, I had to think to see if we actually took someone into custody at a school for a criminal-related event. There's only one instance where we took someone into physical custody for a crime that was committed. There are instances with mental health crisis where certainly our officers are involved if needed to help restrain a student and remove them from the building to get them the help they need. That partnership with our district, there's definitely an understanding of that line between law enforcement and school discipline and who's responsible for each of those. So I think our district does a great job on policy, but also training their staff and what staff is able to do in terms of going hands-on with students and how and when staff can go hands-on with students, use physical restraint. That they're trained to handle that so that we're not getting involved in those unless it's absolutely necessary. If needed to be, and that student needs to be engaged in crisis services, they call upon our officers to come help with that and remove them, but still in the least restrictive means possible.
School resource officers. And so that's what he was talking about there. He referenced policies and procedures, which is obviously a really important piece of what we do. I referenced earlier, we have 171 policies. Policy manual is almost 800 pages long. It's on our website. The link is there. If you just Google Wausau Police Policies, you'll come to that page. There are only 11 policies that are mandated in the state of Wisconsin, and so I've just identified a couple of those, which are the primary ones on the slide there. Use of force, officer-involved deaths. That is, if an officer causes the death of another individual, that policy is required in the outside investigation from an external agency. Citizen complaint policy and high-speed pursuits. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about WILEAG, which is the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group. There are about 550 law enforcement agencies in the state of Wisconsin. 40 of them are WILEAG accredited, so about 7 or 8% of law enforcement agencies in the state are accredited. We are one of them, and they provide hundreds of standards that we're required to meet and prove to them that we are meeting on an annual basis. So I just wanted to touch base on that. CALEA is also a law enforcement certification. That's a national certification. The reason that WILEAG was formed is because CALEA is very expensive. It's about $12,000 a year to become accredited. Many of the same standards are incorporated within WILEAG, but that only costs us a few $100s annually, so it's much more cost effective. Ben Graham is our investigations captain on this next video. He's going to talk about how we set policies specific to use of force.
Hello, my name is Ben Graham, and I'm a captain in the Wausau Police Department and oversee the investigations division of the PD. I'm also a certified instructor in defensive and arrest tactics and professional communications. And the question that I want to answer is, how does the Wausau Police Department arrive at force policies and practices? So there are 3 main sources that assist the Wausau Police Department in its development of policy and practice. Hello, my name is Ben Graham, and I'm a captain with the Wausau Police Department and oversee the investigations division.
Policy. So this is just an excerpt of some of the important policies that you have on your flash drive. I just wanted to make sure that we incorporated some of those into there. So training of police officers, I'm going to talk just briefly about that. I referenced what the minimum requirements are. We are required to have 24 hours of in-service annually. We have a $55,000 training budget that's authorized through the city council, which is one of the more generous training budgets in the state of Wisconsin. So those are the numbers of hours that we've trained as a department annually, and you'll see on average per year, each officer gets about 100 hours of training every single year. Yeah. So I'm going to provide some of this data. I figured that this task force would be interested in it. So this slide was pulled from the Department of Justice in Wisconsin. By the end of this year, every law enforcement agency is going to have to transition from uniform crime reporting. Those words probably sound somewhat familiar to you. The FBI set the uniform crime reporting requirements decades ago, and recently has transitioned to incident-based reporting system, or IBRS. And so this data is now available for anybody that wants to go onto the Department of Justice website and search it. So that's what we did to provide you this information, and this is arrest data by race. So that's just a snippet. You'll see the ranking there from blue to red is those agencies that arrest people of a certain race less than other departments in the state. They're in the blue, more often in the red. So you'll see Wausau's third from the top there. You'll be able to see it a little bit better in this slide. I just took a zoomed in view so you could see it better. You'll see that our arrest rate of Asians in our community, the population is about 12%, and they're about 7.1% of our arrests. For the black community, you'll see the population is about 1.2% in Wausau, and they're about 13% of our arrests. And then this next slide is citation and warning data by race broken down. You'll see, the Asian community, we issue citations and warnings at a rate of 9.39%, and they're 12% of our population. The black community, we issue warnings and citations at a rate of 6.83%, and they're 1.2% of our community. So I guess the question that I have is, what does all that mean, right? And so I just took this slide, copied and pasted it from the FBI UCR statistics and the proper use of statistics. And I think we all know that there's a lot of things that come into effect in terms of why people come in contact with the criminal justice system. Policing and how we police and decisions we make certainly are a piece of that, but there are a lot of other data points and reasons that people come into contact with the criminal justice system. So I just wanted to kind of put that in your mind so that you can contemplate that, and I think it's important for us to understand the data and understand how to evaluate and analyze the data, and I won't pretend to be an expert on that, but just something that was in my mind. Other things for consideration that I didn't really touch on in this presentation, there's probably questions around SWAT operations, no-knock search warrants. Our mobile field force team is our what is the lay term for that is a riot team that we have here. How do we plan and execute search warrants? We have body cameras. We've had them since 2016. Our open records department handles a lot of open records requests, not just for reports, but for body cameras, for squad cameras. So any incident that happens in the city, we have video of, and you can look at it. Brady letters. A Brady letter is a letter that is required to be written to the district attorney when I am aware, as the chief of police, that an officer has been untruthful, and that's at any point in time. So often when we have an investigation internally about untruthfulness, that usually ends in the employee's termination or resignation in lieu of termination. So I just wanted to put that in there. Maybe that's something you might be interested in talking more about. Certainly emergency detentions and how we handle mental health crisis response, and then officer wellness and the impact on policing, I think, is an important component as well. I talked about our social media policies, but there's examples of where you can go to find it. We have a website. People, a lot of times when I'm out giving presentations in the community, they ask me, Chief, what's the most important thing to you in the community? And a lot of times they mean OWI enforcement, drug enforcement, domestic violence, racial diversity, those kinds of things. And my answer is that it's none of those things. The thing that's most important to me is officer wellness, because I think we do a great job of hiring. I think we do a great job of training. And I think that when people get into law enforcement, they do so because they want to help their community become a better place. They want to serve others in a profound way. And so if we do officer wellness right, I think that everything else takes care of itself, and we work diligently and well on those other issues if we have the right staff that are trained well, that are taken care of. So that's a really important and critical message for me. So what isn't in the policy manual? At every one of our swear-in ceremonies, I read this letter that was written about 6 years ago to one of our officers. And so I'm going to read it here, and then I'll close. Dear Officer Kevin, our lives changed forever that day. You were there. Our family calls you our angel. I can't imagine the heartbreak and tragedy you see on a regular basis. I'm sure that day was just another day at the office for you. I came home from work and found my husband had hanged himself. I was 7 weeks pregnant. I don't remember a lot about that day. Strangely, I remember you holding my hair back as I threw up. You weren't just there doing your job, but I believe you genuinely cared about me. Thank you for your service and dedication. You have a tremendously difficult job and you excel at it. Please accept my deepest gratitude and know that you matter. You see, there's nothing in our policy manual that says when you go to a suicide scene and there's a spouse of a loved one who just found her husband dead, that you hold her hair back while she throws up. There's nothing in our policy manual that says that. It's 793 pages long. So how do we get officers to do that? We hire officers for character, and we train them to do everything else. We retain them by providing them excellent training, caring for their wellness throughout their career. That's how we do that. And that's a really critical piece to, I think, the policing task force. And it's important to understand that the compassion that we give and the care that we provide to people in our community, that's what sets us apart. That's what excellence looks like. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that overview of the department. I think you've given us a lot to chew on, and will stimulate discussion in the upcoming months. So are there any questions of Chief Levin at this time? He will be a regular part of our task force deliberations, and we've asked him to be in attendance at all of our meetings. So he will be a resource on an ongoing basis.
At some point, we don't need to do it today, but I would like to know more about the investigations, how they're initiated, what sparks them usually. At first, I thought that these were investigations prompted by citizen complaints, but it's probably not all that. It's probably other officers seeing things. So I'd be interested in that aspect at some point.
That leads us into the sort of the next item on the agenda, what information do we need to make decisions? And so I think that's the type of questions that what we'd like to do is sort of assemble those questions and then let the chief, try to deal with those topically, if we can, sort of put them in different buckets, if that's acceptable. Are there any specific questions relative to the presentation today? Again, I think a very good job, and we'll go in. Is the slide presentation available to us?
I can email it to you if you'd like it.
I think it would be helpful, once, one of the items that we've got is how will the information be shared? I think later on the agenda, I think we want to make sure that whatever information is given to us is available to the community and resource, so we should talk about that, but I think it would be helpful if we can get that and have that available to us. Other questions for Chief Levin? If not, let's move on to the question. And Pat, I think you did a very good job of starting at what information do we need to make decisions? It's that type of, what policies and procedures do you have questions about? And again, we're not looking for the chief to answer those today, but rather create some buckets so that we can drive our discussion at future meetings. So are there questions that you would like addressed or issues? Will?
Yes, and thank you, Chief Bliven, for the presentation. And it may be in the drive that you gave us, but just wanted to make sure that we're able to get information related to, so we had the breakdown in terms of demographics and arrests, but I'd like to see some information regarding specific types of arrests, like, theft and how that is impacting in terms of these different communities. Are there more arrests in certain types of areas or less? And look at that data. Also, and this kind of will bleed into sort of other areas. One of the things I think I want to see from this task force, and I think one of the goals is really to engage with the public and looking at, how do we measure success after all of this is done. I think one part of that is how we collaborate with the public and how we get a sense of what the public gains from this. So I don't know if we want to do sort of like surveys or something in terms of where we're at currently in terms of the public's thoughts on how on this committee on different things, sort of what they know about the police force right now, where they're lacking or in terms of education about the policies, and then be able to use that information to look at, sort of how far we have progressed in terms of, the goals that we set out in terms of educating the public, in terms of getting out information, seeing out surveys, maybe after the program has been implemented, the policies or what comes from this task force. I think that's a way to measure one portion of success, seeing sort of how the public started in terms of what they felt or had in terms of information and in terms of reaching out to them, and if they feel differently in terms of feeling like they're a part of this process and that they have more information moving forward. So I think on that end, that would be useful to get some information just on sort of where the public currently is here in our town and their thoughts.
So are you suggesting sort of a baseline survey of their perceptions of the police department in certain areas?
That, and then some questions as well, more specifically about certain policies. Specifically, some of the policies we'll deal with, the use of force and other things. What does the public know right now? Because that may tell us, too, in terms of when we move forward, if we need to create mechanisms to make sure that we're getting out information in a way that's more digestible. Because one thought I had was, like Chief Bliven mentioned, the manual is 793 pages. And I was thinking of maybe making it, making like a pamphlet or packet, kind of doling down main points to make it more digestible for the average person and more accessible. If they were to pick this up and say, hey, here's, the basic points and terms, and then it points them to where if they wanted to read more information in the manual to get a fuller breakdown where that is. But I think that would help in terms of education, and also if they feel that certain things aren't being addressed, they can look at that and say, okay, this is addressed, and then how is it being implemented? Just think on that end, just making sure that the public stays engaged and is able to understand what the police do every day, what policies are in, and then I think that'll help in terms of, too, if there are issues in terms of the public and what they're saying, they can point to specifics. So I think it helps overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
So I'd like to just echo some of the similar sentiments as it relates to public input. If I'm not mistaken, several years ago, the use of the Unified Formed Crime Reporting System pegged Wausau as one of the safest communities in the United States, if not the safest, based on that data. So it's nice to see that, we're looking at a different reporting system. But one of the things the city did several years ago as it was doing strategic planning, started to talk about the perception of safety as a strategic initiative. And I do think that's a really important concept as you look at the relationship with law enforcement and the overall perception of safety and crime in your community. And so I think addressing that in the public input sessions and getting both perception and actual data in the conversation is an important element. And as we go into public input, I think there's a distinction between listening and then getting input. And I do think we need to do both. I think we need to just listen in a framework that can give people a sense of what we're looking for. But then when we go forward with starting to formulate some recommendations, not just say that these are our recommendations, give us your input, but this is the range of options relative to these issues. And I think a similar parallel with another governing agency that's doing that is the county board relative to their size. Their public input process isn't just going to put forward one plan. It's going to put forward several different options and allow people to weigh in so that there's a full spectrum of consideration. And I think that would be important in our work as well.
Other thoughts?
I have another, just a,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is kind of, can be general to government overall, but also the police department. I would like us to be able to communicate to the community something that I think is true with our police department, is that you don't need to be any kind of hotshot or special citizen or hold an office or anything else to reach out to the police department or the police chief himself and discuss an issue. If you've got a problem with something, any citizen is entitled to contact their police department, just as they're entitled to contact their mayor's office or anything else. But I think it's especially intimidating for people to contact police. I know as an alderman, people, they'll tell me something rather than tell the police, and the police are the ones who need to know it. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but I think it would be a worthy goal.
Just from my perspective, I would be interested in knowing what resources does the department think that they need that could benefit them in carrying out their charge? And what resources do you think the department would need the city to have that could help them address some of those social mental health services that currently aren't there? So looking internally and looking at the system, understanding that you are, in many cases, the arresting officer, you are not the jail, you are not the probation, parole, and others, but there are the mental health. What resources would help the community feel safer? And so if we could look at that. And one of the things that I've also been intrigued with is the issue of arrest versus charges. When you arrest someone, it's possible to have multiple charges against that person. Is there a relationship, going back to what Will had asked? Are there some racial disparities relative to the number of charges that are made at the time of the arrest? Mike?
Just more broadly, I thought it was very helpful for the chief to bring up a point about officer decertification as really being a weakness from a state level. If there are other items like that we could address and move forward, I would like to hear from the chief at some point about other ideas, if there are other aspects of public policy that we could address more broadly.
Other items, and again, this will be an evolving list, but if we can begin to create, if you will, those buckets and so I'm hearing, we'd like to know more about the demographics of the community that is arrested. We'd like to know more about the officer decertification, sort of that, developing that baseline, the public's perception about the approachability of the officers and others, getting at Pat's points. And we'll try to develop some buckets and address those at meetings going forward. So we'll sit down with the chief and try to get a timeline for dealing with those. So again, if you have other things that you'd like to put in those buckets or new buckets that you'd like to create, we can do that as we go along. It's helpful if we can get as many things on the table early in the process. So if you think of things between now and the next meeting, we encourage you to let us know. Michael or Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to put in our buckets?
I really, because Chief Blivin brought up the decertification, I found that to be a really interesting point of looking further into. But I also am in complete agreement with perceptions from the community needing to be more closely looked at, and what those demographics look like for that as well.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I have one more thing
ahead.
I'd like to add, maybe, Chief Blivin. Part of this process, I think, too, will be making sure that there's a real buy-in in terms of what comes out of this committee from the force. And I want to make sure that they feel invested, that they feel heard as well. So any feedback in terms of some of the policies that that have been instituted, or some of the things moving forward, if they have any input or feedback about those specifically, because obviously we want to improve our community. We don't want to make it, it's not trying to make the job of the officers harder. We're trying to make sure that things are done right. And so, but they're the ones that have to be out there and in the end, implementing on a daily basis. So I'd like to hear just some feedback from fellow officers in terms of what challenges that they're facing in trying to make sure that they're, weighing out sort of the daily challenges they have with the actual policies, and if they feel that there needs to be some changes as well, and what those are, so that we can assist everybody in this process moving forward. Thank you.
Other? Haley?
Yeah, I guess I would be interested to know more of the specifics of like where are officers' responsibilities when working with somebody in crisis, and then where does like the crisis intervention piece come in? Just because I think, people have a lot of concerns, especially with social media, and like ways that crisis situations have been dealt with by officers. And I just would be curious to know like what the policies are specifically for that.
To go hand in hand with that, perhaps a discussion of de-escalation processes? Other thoughts? So we started the discussion then on what does community engagement mean to you? And I think, Pat, we sort of laid out the importance of developing that baseline understanding of what people perceive as being, but how do you think that we should be engaging the public? I think at the end of the day, there will be a series of, again, options that we will take out to the community for feedback and looking for their input into those. But are there some things that we can do throughout this process to ensure that we're getting it right and identifying the right issues?
The only thing I would say is that we need to start it early. Let people know that we're have started this process, and that we want to hear from them and hear what their concerns are and know what they think should be working on. Because otherwise, we're going to, 10 months from now, we're going to say, okay, here's our report. Thank you. Do you have anything to comment on it? So I think we need guidance from the community and those who are involved, get more input from people of color who have had various experiences in our community, and see if there's a way that we could improve those things. Just, don't go 2/3, 3/4 of the way and then pop a public hearing. Do it early and do it often.
Other thoughts on engagement?
I think one of the great things that was mentioned in the presentation, the police department engages in is obviously community policing, getting out there in the community through different activities. They mentioned nursing home, neighborhood meetings, Boys and Girls Club, those types of things. I think we want to make sure that as they get out into the community through these different efforts, they're constantly reminding the community of the efforts that we're making here to further engage. Neighborhood meetings are a great place to sort of engage with people. I know there's the Westies neighborhood and others as they have meetings. Also, obviously, the media, any community events, and maybe we want to think about before we get sort of to the end of this process, maybe having, more of a town hall setting where people can actively engage and talk about sort of some of the things that they're experiencing or want to see. And, through different events, but just to have some literature and other things out there in the public and media, just making sure that the awareness is there throughout the process. So like you say, we don't get to the end and it just feels like we put out something and no one was engaged to the end, and then it's like, okay, what is this? So I want to make sure that there's multiple areas and options for community engagement.
Anything else?
Chairman, I would also encourage us to reach out into the schools with the officers we have in the schools to engage with the next generation about what their perceptions are of law enforcement in the context of today, and how they'd like to see that shape in the future so that they can see Wausau as a place that they want to continue to live past high school. I think that's an important consideration.
I know you're all speaking about engagement in terms of personal contact with people. I just wanted to put out there that the city does have survey software, so we can put together a survey with a link, and we could really drive that through social media as well. So it's just another avenue that we have access to. So if the task force was interested in that, we can facilitate that.
All right. Anything else in terms of engagement? And again, we'll come back and revisit that as we go through, but what I'm hearing is we need to start that now. So we'll give some thought to how we do that, and you've got some tools, and I think I also heard that we need to do, we probably have 3 populations that we need to serve. One is your department, that Will did a good job of outlining. I think second is the community, and the third, if you will, I think we want to also hear from those that experience the criminal justice system firsthand. I think that their perspectives are important as well as we go forward to get a better understanding. So if we can work on that.
And I think I just want to add to that, also just making sure that we, in some way, reach out to what we call vulnerable populations. We have a vibrant Hmong community, LGBTQ community, Hispanic community, and African American community, different communities of color and minorities. We want to make sure that we're hearing really their voices as well in this process. So that's all I would add. Thank you.
Anything else? So at the end of the day, what would success look like? And Ben, I'm going to impose on you because you were part of that Facebook meeting a few weeks ago, and you made a comment on that, saying that you want, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but then to let you elaborate, but you wanted us to be a community that people felt comfortable moving to, and because of how safe we were.
Yeah, I mean, I think going to our vision for our police department, which is to be regarded as a standard of excellence, that's not just policing, but that's community-wide. And so, there's regular conversation in our communities around making sure that we have people that are engaged in the community, that feel safe in the community, and that take pride in the community. And so that's what excellence is. That's what excellence is about, is making a community that thrives. And so I think this task force has great opportunity ahead of itself to develop and talk about things and engage the community in a really critical time in our country about a really critical issues around law enforcement. specifically. And so I think that would be success if this task force is able to make recommendations that makes the police department better, that makes the community safer, and to the point made earlier by Michael, you know, it gives people the perception of safety. Even if they are safe now, they need to feel safe. And so I think whatever we do here in this task force, I think it's important that we keep those things in mind. And that's what success would be like to me, is not just incremental improvement, but really making people feel safe or trust law enforcement. You know, if that means, you know, doing things in a different way than we do them today, then that's fine.
Other thoughts on what success looks like? Would it be, you know, taking that, you know, making sure that, again, will you identify those vulnerable groups and populations, that they have that same level of safety, feeling of safety and others, so at the end of the day, there's a diverse feeling of safety and pride in the community? I'm looking. Kayla?
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with what you were saying and what Will was saying. So, you know, I come from a multiracial family, and it was really interesting growing up, you know, hearing my white grandparents talk about police officers and, you know, what their perception was versus, you know, when I was living in Oklahoma with my black family, and like there was just far more mistrust for officers. And so I really feel like the purpose of this is to get that feedback from the vulnerable communities, because, you know, there's individuals in the community who already do feel comfortable with officers and do have that sense of trust and rapport. But, you know, this isn't necessarily for them. This is for the people who don't have that level of trust. And what can we do to strengthen that, you know, so that, you know, if I did have my family who came from Oklahoma, who do have that skepticism and do have that mistrust for officers and law enforcement, you know, they could come here and realize, like, this is a different climate and this is a different community from where they live, you know, and they don't have to carry that uniform viewpoint of officers and just have to have that broad spectrum mistrust because Wausau is different, because Wausau has made a concerted effort to make it different.
And I think we'll again expound on what success looks like, but I think Chief Bliven did a good job of outlining a vision, and I think with some work we can incorporate that into have that as our goal at the end of the day.
I think I'd just like to add to, one thing that's been expressed to me, people in the community, about moving forward this task force, and I've gotten largely positive comments in terms of moving forward, but there's this fear that, you know, you get this done and then there's no follow-up. How do you measure, how do you show that in practice something has actually changed? So I think part of it has to be perception, but part of it has to be actual data showing that there has been some changes somewhere, or that, you know, where there are specific areas of improvement, that those have been made or issues have been dealt with, and this is what it looks like in effect. Because sometimes you know, I've been on a different number of boards and task force and other things. Sometimes you can have the right policy, but if the way in which it's enacted doesn't yield the results, then you might have to look back at it. Or if it shows that it's actually working, then that's actual success. You can say, hey, here's what we instituted, here's an issue, here's what we did to deal with that issue, and then here have been the results since then. We can actually show concrete improvement, and a way to just follow up continually with the community. So this isn't like a one and done thing, but the community has a way, maybe some sort of follow-up of something the police department comes out with every, you know, year or whatever, to say, okay, here's what's still, you know, here's how we're still making these strides and improving. so that's something that the public knows that we're all committed to moving forward.
I just want to weigh in on this. I completely agree. I think the regular check-in is super important. And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but like having it shareable in a way that's understandable, maybe infographic. I've seen some other police departments sharing information on what they're doing already to follow up on some of the discussions they're having. So regular, easy to understand, opportunity for more engagement from the public, I think.
And it's unfortunate, did Michael leave, or is he, North Central Healthcare does a lot with dashboards. And I think that what we may want to do at the end of the day is, I think what we have to do is articulate clear, actionable recommendations. And with that, we can create some expectations and a dashboard by which the city can evaluate, because we will at one point in time be done, but then it is important for someone else to be able to take that and to evaluate it. So let's keep that idea of a dashboard in terms of this was our desired goal, and sometimes policies have unintended consequences, and I think it's important for us to not lose sight of what the goal was with the actionable item. So we'll put dashboards in one of our buckets. Anything else in terms of what does success look like? All right. How will the information be shared? Now, we have, this information, the agendas are posted. If somebody from the public would like to find out what we're doing, where do you think we should have that information? And what type of information?
I don't know for sure what the answer is, but I think there's, the agendas and minutes can be posted on the city website. No different than all of our council subcommittee and council meetings, police and fire commission meeting minutes are all on there. The video of this meeting will be uploaded to the city website on the public access YouTube channel. We could create a section on the website, on the city website or on the police department page of the website with the materials that I've provided on the jump drive. We could put whatever I think you guys want on there, if that's acceptable or if there's something else you're looking for.
I'm asking you to wear your citizen hat. Where would you likely go if you were trying to, as an average citizen, if you were trying to find out what this group is doing? Would you go to the city website? Would you go to the police department website? Or are they connected in such a way that it wouldn't matter?
Well, I think what I would do is I would Google Wausau Policing Task Force. And I think wherever we host that, whether that's on the city site or on the police site, which is a subsection of the city site, I think it would come up. So I'm not sure that maybe that's splitting hairs.
I think we need to be a little careful, and I respect the idea of using the police department's website as a forum. But I also think there needs to be some safety in the format of the perceptions. The task force is a separate entity. And having it so that if there are folks who are having a struggle or having some distrust or wanting to make sure that this isn't we're doing this and rubber stamping things, having things directly fed off of the police department site may come across, I don't know, I just get nervous about where the information might seem like it's coming from.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
So we'll look at that, and we'll talk to the city, and I think we're going to be sharing a lot of the information that you generate, but I think that idea, perception many times drives reality for people. And Mike, that was a really good suggestion. Other thoughts on where we are?
Well, I know a lot of people consume information through Facebook. Social media is just how we live today, and especially now with COVID. So I guess if there was some way to maybe just a sort of brief, check out what's going on today, this, we just had a meeting, brief sentence, click on this link and you can find out more information about it. Just some way in social media out there, because I know a lot of my constituents, a lot of people out there, that's how they connect the information.
All right.
Just for clarity, so are you asking for the police department to share that? I'm sure the mayor can too, but.
I think it's up for debate. I understand what Mike is saying, but I think it's also, but I disagree a little bit on that in terms of having it also as one option. I'm talking about the multiple places that this is coming out. So mayors, police department, stuff, whatever, because it shows, again, we want in a day this to be a buy-in of everybody, and it's to show that, this is coming out of this organization, but we want the community involved, but we also want it to be known that the police are supporting this as well, and that we're all trying to collaborate and work together. So I think having this information come out, police department's website, from the mayor, from the city's website, and as many resources as possible to get out the information, I think is helpful at the end of the day. And so Facebook, from either source, it could be the same post, just shared between us, just so that information is out there.
Not to get too prescriptive, but would it be helpful maybe if we kind of worked on a flow of information, whether, like, where it should be on the website, how we share that, where it comes from? I can bring that for next time. We can work together.
That would be
Okay.
helpful.
Along those lines, quickly, I think, like with the general concept of social media, I think that as we go, we're going to have things that will pop up that we'll see as opportunities to, have an event that is suitable for Facebook participation or something like that, and it would maybe drive more citizen participation. So I think it's something to keep in the back of our minds, and things will come to us, I'm sure, as we go in the coming months.
Thank you. All right. Meeting frequency, once a month? Does this, obviously, this date worked for everybody, but does this date, sort of the placeholder is the third Monday of the month, work for everyone?
Probably works for me.
As we think about this and we look out into the seating area of council chambers and see the number of citizens attending our inaugural meeting, I think it would be appropriate to try to have some evening meetings, maybe every other one, or all of them, or I don't know how other people feel, but I think it would be great for people who were working a normal work schedule to be able to pop in on our meetings on occasion.
I think the idea of having different times also allows those folks who work in, whether it's first shift or second shift, if, as much as it creates havoc for some of us, but the idea of it's always at a certain time, they might never be able to make it, but if you would have it every once in a while, shift a little bit to keep it open and transparent, that could be beneficial.
Well, it's confusing, it's beneficial, but it's also confusing, so we can weigh that.
Totally agree.
Do you think maybe some of these opportunities for public participation, we could have like a brief meeting, but we hold them at times where the public is more apt to show up?
Yeah, because I was going to echo Alderman Beckham's comments that I think probably, Mondays, third Mondays, fourth Mondays work fine with me, but I think in order to get more engagement, and, I work a day job as well, and I know maybe some other people here as well, I think if we can, in the evenings, like a 4 to 5:30 or something around that. I don't know the schedule here in terms of city, but maybe figure out a day where we could do evenings, or even in the mornings, if that, I don't know, if that would work for people. But I think if probably the most participation is usually going to be after people get off work in terms of being able to tune in.
Does that 4 to 5:30 timeframe work for people? I know a lot of people with families go home and they don't, you get home, it's hard to leave. It's been a while since I've had kids at home, but I know that that's hard. Do we want to try our next meeting at 4 and see how that works? And can we agree on the third Monday of the month and right now target 4? Would that,
Just a note, you're going to have to make sure that you have a hard stop at 5:15 because public health and safety, that's probably what you were about to say, if we pick this date.
I kind of like the way the mayor was kind of going there, that maybe we have kind of consider these afternoon meetings more of a business meeting, and then we have a special, like a update meeting or something like that, we have it at 7. I don't know, but.
Will, do we want to try the next meeting? An hour and 15 is pushing it. You can't get into a substantive discussion of a touchy issue in an hour and 15 minutes. I think that extra 15 minutes means a lot. So if we were to go try 3:30 at the next time and see, and then we can, I think what I'm hearing is the desire is to make sure we give opportunities for people that are working irrespective of shift to provide input to us. So we may want to go with our business meetings, and for those that can't participate, give them the opportunity to use the YouTube and as a way of catching up. But then when we go out for engagement, that we look at a more random schedule to allow everybody to participate. Does that make sense? All right, we will look at that as a goal. Anything else to come before us today? So we will be meeting on the 19th of October. I assume here?
Yes, then we can record it and broadcast it and all of the things.
And anything else? If not, thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you for your interest. And again, if you have other thoughts on informational needs, please get to, my intention after every meeting is to sit down with the mayor and with the police chief to sort of debrief what did we hear, what are the expectations for presentations at the next meeting, and begin working on the next meeting agenda. So we'll sit down with those. So if you want to share anything with any of us, it'll get into the discussion going forward. So please don't be afraid to follow up with any thoughts that come up after this. Anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
First motion to adjourn?
It's been moved, seconded by well, it's not debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you all.